let me, if I could, let me spin it way back to the 1500s and the 1400s,
Okay.
when the first explorers came over to the United States. When the first explorers came over to the United States, even before Columbus, they engaged with the Caribbean first. And in the Caribbean, they realized that them, in many cases, being from the Catholic Church, so having a form of religion, they realized that the people they were talking to in many cases spoke Hebrew. And more importantly, they dressed like Hebrew. And so they began to realize that they had found the lost 12 tribes of Israel. A very, very important book that people can look up to is called Lost Tribes and Promised Land. It is a historical record that accounts, excuse me, in part for the discovery of these Hebrew Israelites in the islands of Puerto Rico and the islands of the Dominican Republic and different areas. So this information was transferred also to the slaves when they began to come over during the transatlantic slave trade in the 1620s. So the slaves that came over knew who they were, got together with those that were enslaved both in the Caribbean and in the South, and specifically in the crossroads of Florida, among the so-called Seminole Indians, who had connections with the Caribbean and connections with the traditional transatlantic slaves into the South. And as a result from that, several of those brothers and sisters held on to the understanding that they were Hebrew Israelites. One of those was a brother that we call today Abba Bivens. And he, coming up from Florida, and also the great man Yaquab, one of the three that founded the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Yaquab also, being in that area, knew this information and came north with this information. The white Jews around, now this is all around the 20s and 30s, 1920s, 1930s, in the whole era of emancipation and freedom for blacks. Blacks began to go and look into their history and find out more about what they, where they came from, and then discovered this information. So during that time, the 20s and 30s, they began to start to migrate north and look into blacks and others in the north. And what they had discovered was that the white Jews who had synagogues in places like New York City had began to start a sort of proselytizing program in the 1900s. And this can be found in the museums like the Schomburg and other museums. You can find the history of so-called Black Judaism in places like Harlem. Like one of the first black synagogues was set up in Harlem and other places. Now, these were synagogues that were run by the white Jews, or how can I put it, like founded and orchestrated and set up. So basically you walked into this synagogue, you learned everything the white Jews learned, but you learned that blacks were converts to Judaism in these synagogues. This was sort of their program. And then in the 60s, in the early 60s or so, same brother, our Bibbins, discovered in the records that we were in fact not converts to Judaism, but that we were in fact the descendants of the Jews. He then commissioned several brothers to get together and research it, and these brothers included Chief Head Priest Ariah and others, and discovered, yes indeed, that we were not converts to Judaism, but that we were the bloodline of these lost 12 tribes. This, of course, created a big stir and a big controversy, and as a result, Bibbins separated from the other Hebrew Israelites that were still following that traditional way. He eventually got killed in 1960, in the 60s. I don't want to get the exact, I don't want to get the year wrong, but he eventually was killed by a Muslim group in New Jersey. At that time, he turned after his death. Then 3 we call pioneers or part of the 7, Marsha, Yaquab, and Ariyah. They moved from where the Book of Torah, which was Abba Bibbins' school, around the corner to 1 West 125th Street, and opened up the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. From there, we ride that river all the way up until Commanding General Yahan.